This is False Start, college football podcast for everyone and everyone else. I'm your host today, Cody Williams, content director at fansided.com. I am not joined today by John Bueller. John Bueller is in relatively my neck of the woods, gallivanting around the desert. We love to see it, getting some well-deserved PTO. So I'm flying solo today, and you're going to be hearing a lot of my voice. I apologize for that, but it's what we got. It's what False Start's got today. And we've got a pretty good show. It's the Monday after the NFL draft. A lot of things to cover coming out of that. And there's only one place to start with the NFL draft. That was the talk of the weekend. That is our first and 15. You're doing great, sweetie. Talking about Quinn Ewers and Shedeur Sanders. Obviously, Shedeur Sanders was the bigger story. Projected for a long time to be a first round pick. We talked about it on Thursday night in our draft reaction show. He fell out of the first round. Then he fell out of the second round. Then he fell out of the third round. Then he fell out of the fourth round. And finally, the Browns traded up ahead of the Eagles, who apparently were considering picking him at the 145th pick. The Browns traded up to 144, took Shedeur Sanders after already taking Dillon Gabriel. Now, I'll go ahead and say this. Shedeur Sanders is a better quarterback for the NFL level than Dillon Gabriel. I actually fully expect that Shedeur Sanders will, and I don't know for what spot on the depth chart, but I fully expect that he will beat out Dillon Gabriel for a spot on the Browns depth chart. Having said that, my God, what these interviews must have been like is just beyond me, because we watched guys like Dillon Gabriel, guys like Jalen Milroe, guys who I think are just substantially lower floor. And in some cases, particularly Gabriel, I'm not even sure as high of a ceiling as Shedeur Sanders taken before him. Now, there is something at play with the NFL draft that I think has been talked about pretty consistently on social media and, in various outlets that I do think is at play here as well. The mid-round quarterback really isn't a thing anymore. You look at where these quarterbacks were taken after Tyler Shuck got taken at 40 by the Saints. We didn't see, if I'm not mistaken, we didn't see another quarterback picked until 92 at the very end of the third round when Jalen Milroe went to the Seahawks. And that's kind of the world that we're living in right now. And you can and Jalen Milroe, frankly, is an outlier in that capacity because, yes, he's very raw as a thrower, very raw as a quarterback. But man, you can't teach 4.3 speed. You can't teach a guy who is probably the best athlete on the field for most of his college career. And is probably going to be the best athlete on the field in a lot of NFL games. That's how freakish he is. I understand that we're talking about a player who isn't perfect in Shedeur Sanders. We're talking about a player who took too many sacks. We're talking about a player who doesn't have the biggest arm. But man, I watched him play at Colorado a lot, and some of the knocks against him are Colorado problems more than they are Shedeur Sanders problems. On the field, he is not a fifth round pick. He's just not. Maybe he's not a first round pick. I disagree. I probably would have taken him at the end of the first round, but just based on talent alone. But teams obviously felt differently. So you already have the mid-round quarterback kind of pushing him back, especially without the high floor that you would have with someone or the high ceiling, excuse me, that you would have with someone like Milroe. With Sanders, though, you're coming into a situation where, man, the extracurriculars, how he handled these interviews, there were reports that, the most damning one was he had an interview with Brian Daboll. They gave him an install to study to go in there, and when he didn't get it right, he and Brian Daboll got combative. And I don't think Shedeur Sanders is a bad kid. I really don't. But I also think that he is perhaps a bit too arrogant, a bit too confident in himself. And if that bled, and I think that showed up in the interviews. I really don't think it shows up that much off the field. People were throwing out clips of him talking to the Colorado State quarterback after there was trash talk back and forth between those two during the offseason. Man, I like that. I like that a lot. I think that's the mentality you want in your quarterback. You don't want a quarterback who's trying to be friends with everyone. We were applauding Lamar Jackson at the end of last season because he said he's not friends with other quarterbacks because he wants to beat them. And you can't be friends with your competition. I like that. I like that in a quarterback. I really do. And so I'm not I'm not trying to character assassinate Shedeur Sanders here, but I do hope that this gives him some self-reflection, gives him a chip on his shoulder, and like puts him out. Like he has a chance to win this Browns starting job. I think he's a better quarterback than Dylan Gabriel. I'm pretty damn sure he's a better quarterback than Kenny Pickett. He at least has an unknown factor that Kenny Pickett does not at this point. We know what Kenny Pickett is, and it's not very good. And then Joe Flacco is nearing 40 years old. Sure, he might be better quarterback than Shedeur Sanders right now, but at the same time, is that really a good move for the future? No. Like, there's a chance Shedeur Sanders wins this job. I hope this like is a come to Jesus moment where he figures things out and is able to go out there, compete at the highest level, and get this done because I I can understand the reasons he fell. I still think it is egregious that he fell to the 144th pick. That's just it's still hard for me to wrap my head around. I don't like in my draft memory, I don't remember anything like this happening to this degree. So, and then we have Quinn Ewers. And Quinn Ewers is a more interesting case because I love Quinn Ewers. I'm on the record many, many times saying that. However, I think he and Jalen Milroe, for that matter, would have greatly benefited from another year in college. He had another year of eligibility. He had reportedly had offers ranging up to $8 million in NIL to enter the transfer portal and head somewhere else and hand the reins off to Arch Manning at Texas. He was dead set on going to the NFL, and he ends up at the 231st pick, going to the Miami Dolphins. Now, in terms of the situation, there's not an unclear path to Quinn Ewers actually seeing the field in Miami this season. Ahead of him on the depth chart is Tua, who just point blank has had trouble staying healthy, and Zach Wilson, who, to put it bluntly, is not very good to this point from what we've seen from him in the NFL. So if those are the two, like, beat out Zach Wilson in camp, you're the backup. And history has told us, unfortunately, I'm not wishing injury on Tua, but history has told us that Tua is probably going to get hurt, and Quinn Ewers could get an opportunity in that situation. Having said that, he's going to be making about $7 million less on his rookie car. Or, sorry, I apologize. He's going to be making about $7 million less in 2025 with the Miami Dolphins than he would have had he gone to whoever wanted him in the transfer portal for that $8 million figure that was reported. That's a that's a very tough situation for Quinn Ewers. Again, I hope it motivates him, but man, that feels like you might have miscalculated the situation. That feels like you misread the room in a pretty egregious way. And it's frustrating from my end because I am a Quinn Ewers believer, but it's also frustrating on my end because I saw that. Like, you have a guy who struggled to stay healthy, who at the end of last year, who I firmly believe that his oblique injury that he was playing through limited what he was able to do on the field. And you saw it. Like, people were very critical of Quinn Ewers, and I was like, man, the dude is hurt. So when you're looking at all of these factors, it's one of those things where it's like, man, I know that Quinn Ewers didn't put together the best tape, but I know what he can do when he is fully healthy. If you come back another year and show that, he's not a seventh round pick. He's just not. Maybe he's probably like there's a good chance he's not a first round pick, but he's not a seventh rounder. And it just feels like a real miscalculation on Quinn Ewers' part. And I do feel bad for that situation. Cost himself a lot of money. But hey, hopefully he can carve out a role for himself in Miami or somewhere else. But hopefully he can carve out a role for himself because I still believe in the kid's talent. I truly do. And I'm probably gonna go down with the ship with that, but that's okay. I've gone down with the ship many times. I'm still here. Gonna move on and kind of start to tie a bow on the 2025 NFL draft. We're gonna do that with TIN10. And I'm gonna do a list by myself. I'm sure Bueller wishes he was here to, you know, opine with me about this. But I'm going to go through and I'm going to give 10 picks that I'm just frankly fascinated by in the 2025 NFL draft. And we're starting with number 10, which is Quinn Ewers, for all the reasons I just mentioned in regards to Tua and Zach Wilson in that quarterback room. He's not going to win the starting job. Tua is the starter. There's no doubt about that. But he has a legitimate path to playing. And that's like not what you normally see from a seventh round rookie, I should say. And I don't know. It's something I'm going to be watching on, seeing how he competes with Zach Wilson in that quarterback room during camp, during the offseason. I'm going to be watching with keen eyes, and that's not just my Quinn Ewers love, got like bleeding into that. That a lot of that is just it's a very interesting situation that even falling into the seventh round, it's a very interesting situation that he's now walking into in regards to the competition, the situation with Tua's injuries. Like it's a very and it's intriguing, and that's why this list is 10 most intriguing because I'm not guaranteeing all of these are going to work out. Just things I have my eye on because I think they're interesting. And speaking of interesting, this is probably the homer pick on here, but Savon Ravel, cornerback out of East Carolina, is number 9, going to the Cowboys with the 76th pick. This is a dude coming into the season that seemed like a first round lock, maybe early second round, but top 40. Tore his ACL at ECU and just started slipping down draft boards because of that. And the Cowboys were able to swoop in and get him with the 76th pick. And Savon Ravel can play. He's raw. There's some technique issues, and I would have loved to see his 2024 season on tape. But he's 6'2", long, like absolute ridiculous wingspan, ball skills out the ass. Like this guy is legitimate. And for the Cowboys to get him with the 76th pick, with the uncertain health of Trevon Diggs, with the uncertain future of Trevon Diggs, in my opinion, because that contract is starting to reach a point where it's movable. And given his lack of availability, you have to wonder if the Cowboys are considering moving on from that. You set yourself up in a really nice way with Savon Ravel coming in this spot. And I also realized that Bueller and I have been saying his name wrong for a very long time. The H is silent. It is Savon, not Siobhan. So I apologize to Savon Ravel for that. Number 8, I'm going to the Texans, where on day 2 of the draft, they took both Iowa State wide receivers, both Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel. I mean, first off, that's just cool. It's intriguing because you have two Iowa State teammates who dominated and led Iowa State almost to the Big 12, to a Big 12 championship, and you have them now going to Houston to play together. That's cool, man. I like that. That's the kind of stuff that gets me going in terms of being a huge college football fan and a huge NFL fan. Like, I absolutely love that stuff. But at the same time, it's weird for the Texans. Like, yes, you needed a receiver. You lost Stephon Diggs to an injury last year, and your offense really took a step back after that fact, I think. You don't know what Tank Dell's availability is going to be. The offense also took a step back after that. But you also don't like have a huge need in the wide receiver room. You have Nico Collins, you have Noah Brown, like you have some nice pieces there. And now you're adding two guys who I'm not sure exactly how they fit. Jaden Higgins actually compares pretty well to Nico Collins. So I love Nico Collins, but I'm not sure you need two of them on your roster. You got to diversify that skill set. I'm going to be interested to see how this works out for these two guys because these are two players I really liked coming in this draft class. And now they're in a situation where I'm not quite sure that they're in the best landing spot, even if I do love the fact that they're still teaming up together in Houston. Number 7, I'm going to go Wyatt Milam going to the Jags at 89th. First off, I like Wyatt Milam a lot. Out of West Virginia, offense probably going to be an offensive guard at the NFL level. Was a tackle at West Virginia, put up some of the best, blocking grades in the country this past season. And honestly, like I like the pick for the Jags. They needed some interior offensive line help. I think he immediately helps them. Why I'm most intrigued by it is Nick Saban had a comment after Wyatt Milam was drafted, and he said that basically he tried to tamper with Wyatt Milam every single year that he was at Alabama. He tried to get him to transfer to the Crimson Tide. I love this. I love this stuff. I love Nick Saban in a post-coaching world where he's just letting out Alabama's bags of dirty little secrets. It's just great to see. It's great content. It's great draft content. And yeah, I just had to throw that in there just because of that nugget. I love it so much. Number 6, I mentioned it earlier, Tyler Shuck going to the Saints at 40. As a college football fan, it's hard for me to be high on it. This feels like draft brain in the highest order. Now, because I am who I am, I fall victim to draft brain quite frequently. Everyone does. When you're this deep in the NFL draft, you fall victim to it. Like, whether it's groupthink, whether it's just having too much time to think about these guys. I think that happens quite a bit. I think that draft brain is a natural thing. With Tyler Shuck, though, I just never got there. I watched this guy at Oregon 6 years ago, 7 years ago, however the hell long ago, and watched him at Texas Tech, watched him at Louisville. There's a reason he had his success at Louisville more so than he ever had really in his career. And it's not just staying healthy. It was Jeff freaking Brom. Jeff Brom is a great quarterbacks coach. He's a great offensive mind. Tyler Shuck has some talent, but I don't think he is an NFL quarterback. I think the Saints are going to regret wasting a top 40 pick on a quarterback, and I would not be surprised if there's a good chance that Tyler Shuck plays a pretty good amount this season. Not to mention the fact that he's 26 years old, I think. Like, I truly don't understand what the Saints are doing with this. I think there's a good chance that in the 2026 draft, they're drafting a quarterback. I just can't get there with this. Like, I'm fascinated to see if it works, to see if I'm right, I'm wrong. Like, I'm always willing to be wrong. I'm not gonna hold on to my opinions like they're gospel. I didn't like Josh Allen coming out of Wyoming. When the Bills took him in the first round, I thought it was catastrophic mistake. Turned out pretty well. I'm happy for Josh Allen. I wasn't rooting against the kid. I'm not rooting against Tyler Shuck at this point either. But I got some questions, and I want to see how those questions are answered. Number five, Jalen Royals going to the Chiefs. Utah State wide receiver at the 133rd pick. I love this. I Royals is not a perfect prospect. He only really lines up on one side of the offense, which is somewhat concerning moving to the NFL level. But if you're the Chiefs, you don't know what the Rashee Rice situation is going to turn out like. And it's twofold. A, he's recovering from the torn ACL, so you don't know what his availability is going to be like early in the season, just health wise. And on top of that, you're also talking about a player who still has a pending legal situation. And we don't know what the ramifications from that are going to be in terms of suspensions or anything like that. So getting a guy like Jalen Royals in the fourth round, you're not over investing draft capital. You're not taking two first round wide receivers back to back years, but you are adding depth with a player who I mean, the proof's in the pudding. At Utah State, he was consistently productive every time he was on the field. Every single time he was on the field, Jalen Royals put up numbers. And so I'm not saying he's going to come out and be like a breakout star, but it is something I'm intrigued to see how he like. There's a chance they rely on him pretty immediately, and to get him in the fourth round, I really like that for the Chiefs. So I'm going to have my eye on that one. I like that one a lot. Another one who I have an eye on, and I think this is a very interesting situation. Number four, Will Johnson going to the Cardinals at 47. Obviously, the knee injury is what, or the knee injury is what, and the issue, I believe they're defining it as a degenerative issue. Um, is what caused Will Johnson to fall out of the first round. He's a first round player though. And he says he's healthy. He says he's ready to rock. He says his knee feels fine. He's not worried about it. And if you're the Cardinals, you needed someone like this in the secondary. So getting him, that's a great pickup for the Cardinals. What's going to be fascinating to see is if and when we get to the second contract with Will Johnson, what that looks like. Are they still confident in the knee? If he plays well, are they willing to hand out a big deal to Will Johnson? If so, how does that look? Like we've seen guys who get to that second contract with similar type of issues. I think a different position, obviously, but I think of Todd Gurley. Like Todd Gurley got to his second contract and kind of started to fall off a cliff. Great football, I mean, phenomenal player early in his career, but the league took a toll on him, and that knee didn't hold up in the same way. So it would be interesting to see that, but I think that you're willing to make that bet when you get to the second round, especially if you're a desperate team like the Cardinals. And I'm fully confident that it's going to help them in the immediate, which is what they needed. Like I think this is the team Bueller and I have talked about it. This is a team that can win the NFC West this year. And so really love that. Going to be fascinating to see not just how it plays out immediately, but also how it plays out long term for Will Johnson because it's a player who obviously has a ton of talent, obviously has huge potential, but you just got to wonder what that injury means for his potential. Number three, David Walker out of Central Arkansas going to the Bucks with the 121st pick. Dude is he's your favorite draft analyst draft crush is how I would describe him. Obviously, it's Central Arkansas. The level of competition not particularly elite, but his production was pretty damn elite. 21% pass rush win rate. That means 5% of his pass rushers, he's winning the rep, putting pressure on the quarterback. Over his last 3 years, here are his sack totals. In 2022, he had 16 sacks and 31 hurries. In 2023, he had 9 sacks and 29 hurries. Those were both in 11 games. And then in 12 games this past season, 12 sacks, 37 hurries, and 4 batted balls. I thought the Bucks were going to take a pass rusher a little bit early. They shocked me in the first round by taking a Emeka Egbuka. Didn't not sure I love that pick, but getting a guy like uh, David Walker in the fourth round, 123rd pick, man, there's some juice here that I'm really intrigued by, and I think this we could look back in a couple years and be like, why did we let the Bucks get David Walker after 122 picks before him? Why did someone not take David Walker in the first 122 picks? Like, it's a dude who just went out there and did it time and time again at Central Arkansas. And yes, I know it is lower level competition, but you want lower level competition guys to dominate, and he sure as hell did that. Number two, our boy Cam Scatterbo going to the Giants. Look, as a Cowboys fan, not thrilled about what the Giants did. Think they crushed the draft. And I think the Cam Scatterbo pick is awesome. Obviously, Cam Scatterbo is an awesome player, but I look at him in the context of the Giants and pairing him with Tyrone Tracy. This is a dynamic backfield that they have. Tyrone Tracy is a converted wide receiver, has really come on as a runner, but also has that pass catching skill because he is a former wide receiver. Cam Scatterbo, one of the best pass catching running backs in this draft class, but also more of a bruising type runner, less elusive. So you have a very interesting of like thunder and a very interesting version of like thunder and lightning because they're both pass catchers. It's not just like, your thunder isn't just running downhill. Cam Scatterbo can absolutely do that, but you also have him with the ability to catch the ball out of the backfield as well. Like there's so many looks they can do with this. And then you throw in, you know, Russell Wilson's going to be the starter. Brian Dable and the Giants have already said this. But you think about the future with Jackson Dart, who they took in the first round, and his dynamic ability. Man, this is an offense that could potentially start to keep teams on their toes when you're thinking about Jackson Dart, Malik Neighbors, Cam Scatterbo, and Tyrone Tracy. So I'm really intrigued to see what that looks like. But I'm most intrigued by number one on our list. I just put down the Patriots. Just the Patriots. Love the Will Campbell pick in the first round. Love Travion Henderson going to this backfield. Gives Drake May a ton of help. Someone who can catch passes out of the backfield as well. Gives him another pass catcher. Speaking of pass catchers, they get Kyle Williams late. They also got Braden Swinson falling to them in the fifth round. Don't understand how that happened. That's a third round player every day, if not higher, especially with his potential and his upside. The Patriots knocked this draft out of the park. And my most intrigue about this draft class because it's truly hard for me to find a pick where I'm not pleased with what the Patriots did in this draft. But I think that the thing I'm most intrigued by is to see what the immediate returns are. I think Drake May showed a lot of promise towards the end of last season. I think that a lot of his issues were situational dependent. Like, find me a worse situation in the NFL than what the Patriots were dealing with last year around Drake May. No wide receivers, a terrible offensive line, and a defense that was not living up to even like mediocre potential. So you go out, you spend heavily in free agency, and then you bring in a banger of a draft class. I think the Patriots can make some real real noise this year. It the AFC East does not scare me outside of the Bills. I think there's a viable chance that the Patriots end up finishing second in the division. Not guaranteeing that, but I think like that's why I'm so fascinated by this draft class is because I think it's really the cherry on top to elevating this team from what are we to we're something now. And so that I have my eyes on the Patriots and what they're going to be able to do. 2025 draft, though, we're going to move past it and we're going to move on to our last slice of pumpkin pie, which is an early look at the 2026 NFL draft. On Sunday, I released the way too early 2026 NFL mock draft for Fansided. And obviously, the headliner that a lot of other people don't have because he is the current betting favorite to be the number one pick. I do not have Arch Manning in this mock draft. He's not coming out. We talked about this. I'm not going to belabor the point, but Arch Manning is not coming out next year. If I could bet that, I would because everything points to the fact that he's not going to come out. Whether you want to talk about the Manning family history, Peyton stayed 4 years at Tennessee. Eli was at Ole Miss for five, including his redshirt year. Then you throw in the way the modern NFL is changing. Inexperience is a killer in terms of draft stock. We've seen teams take gambles on inexperience over the past decade, and it's failed most of the time. And so, with that, that experience becomes more valuable and something that teams value more. So, when you then, like, I mean, you just look at this year's class. Cam Ward and Jackson Start are 3+ year starters. And you look at someone like maybe even like a Will Howard, I think might be a good example. Yes, he started a lot of games, but in terms of starting in a functional passing offense, he's had 1 year at Ohio State. Arch Manning is going into his first year as a starter. I do not think that the Manning family is dumb enough to let him enter the draft with those questions of like, okay, just 1 year body of work. I think like if Texas makes the college football playoff, it'll probably end up being like 15 games in his body of work. It's not enough. It's not enough, Dad. So like I do think that Arch Manning is not coming out, and that's kind of the headliner. So with that, when you look at the 2026 NFL draft, I do even with Arch Manning not being there, I still have, let's see, five quarterbacks being taken in the first round. I have the New York Jets taking Garrett Nussmeier, my guy. Love Garrett Nussmeier. He does need to be a little less Brett Favre. He's got the gunslinger in him, probably why I like him. I'm a big fan of the gunslinger mentality, especially at the college level. Like I like the confidence of I can throw this ball better than you can defend this ball. Quite frankly, I enjoy that style of play, but I think Garrett Nussmeier has the tools to back that up. So interesting to see that. Number two, never thought like if you'd asked me this point last year, if I'd have had this guy here, there's no shot. But I have Cade Klubnik going number two to the New Orleans Saints. Like I said, I'm not a believer in the Tyler Shuck pick. I do think that there's a world where Tyler Shuck just isn't. They're ready to move on after 1 year. So I have Cade Klubnik going number two to the New Orleans Saints. Klubnik really came into his own last year, man. And if he continues to do that, gets the real feel of this Garrett Riley offense, I think that he's probably going to be a top five lock when we get done with it. Third quarterback I have coming off the board, Drew Aller at number 8 to the Indianapolis Colts. I don't foresee the Anthony Richardson Daniel Jones battle turning out well for the Colts. Like someone's going to win it, sure. Uh, can't say I'm confident in whoever does. Sorry, but I do think that Drew Aller has the potential to be the number one pick in next year's draft. There's no doubt about it, but he hasn't shown that yet. And I do think that we do have a situation where he could absolutely elevate himself, but he has to do that. But just based on the raw talent alone, this is someone who NFL teams are going to be very intrigued by. And he has the experience. He just needs, I mean, frankly, at Penn State, he needs wide receiver help, if we're being real honest about it. But he needs to also prove himself a little bit more at the college level before I'm ready to vault him past the third quarterback on this board. Speaking of guys who need more body of work, at 16 to the Pittsburgh Steelers, I have Sam Levitt of Arizona State going off the board. Sam Levitt is fascinating. I love him. He has a lot to prove. We've only really seen it for 1 year at Arizona State, so I want to see it again. I want to see it when he doesn't have Cam Scatterboo. Yes, they replaced him with Udo from Army, but do want to see what that looks like without him. But man, this guy looks like he has tools. He looks like what if Jackson Dart played in a little bit less gimmicky offense? Smaller, sure, but he reminds me of that. He has just a toughness, a leadership quality, but also like I think he's a fantastic runner, like on the move, throwing on the move. I think that he makes the right reads in a lot of situations. You don't see a lot of mistakes from Sam Levitt. I'm intrigued to see how high his draft stock is going to go, and even if he comes out, because he has several years of eligibility left. So there's a chance he doesn't enter the draft after this year. But I am intrigued by the possibility, and if he does enter the draft, I am probably going to be high on him if he replicates even betters what he did in 2024. Last quarterback I have off the board should be of no surprise to anyone who's listened to False Start before. Lenore Sellers going to the Rams. I believe it's at pick 27. Look, man, Lenore Sellers made strides as a passer last year. You look at him passing in week 1 versus week 10, different player. And then you throw in the dynamic athletic ability that he has. If he continues that improvement as a thrower, teams are going to love this guy. Now, I only feel comfortable putting him at 27 because we haven't seen that full development, a full season, even the full complement of what he can be as a passer. But I think there's a ton of untapped potential there that if he continues on the trajectory that he's already on, then we're going to see Lenore Sellers be someone who teams really like. Kind of going off the quarterback position, and you can read a lot of this on fansided.com at the way too early 2026 NFL mock draft. Caleb Downs is going to be fascinating. He's probably the best player in this class, but he's a safety. Now, granted, he's a damn good safety. He's also a safety that can play in the nickel. He's also a safety that can play against the run and against the pass equally as effective. He's also a hell of a punt returner. So, like, he offers a ton of value to a defense. But how high do you take him? That's going to be the big question with Caleb Downs. Curious to see what happens there. And then I added a section here, and it's just guys who I'm planting my flag on. Could look dumb, don't really care. Peter Woods out of Clemson is one of them. 315 pounds, can play on the edge, can also line up on the interior. Dude's just a freak. And like I'm not going out on a limb by having Peter Woods as one of my guys. He's probably a top five on every early big board that you're going to see. So like I'm not like patting myself on the back for finding this guy. Like he's well known. But I think he's going to be a star. Like he reminds me, like with this size, speed, combo, and versatility that he has, he reminds me a hell of a lot of Calais Campbell. And Calais Campbell has played in this league for almost 2 decades. And there's a reason for that. He's been good for almost 2 decades as well. And I think Peter Woods has that type of potential. Another guy, Eric Singleton Jr., who selfishly I had going to the Cowboys in the 2026 mock draft, transferred from Georgia Tech to Auburn. I think, granted, we don't know what Jackson Arnold is going to look like as he transfers from Oklahoma to Auburn, but man, I think getting out of the Georgia Tech offense and going into a more pass heavy offense, which Auburn isn't like the pass heaviest offense in the world, but they are more pass heavy than Georgia Tech. That's for sure. Even with Georgia Tech not running the triple option, Haynes King is not the most dynamic thrower of the football that I've ever seen. But I think Eric Singleton Jr. could really break out. This dude's a freak, like absolute 99th percentile speed, just body control, ability to make people mix, play bigger than his frame. I love this dude. I think he has a chance to be wide receiver one in next year's class. I'm going to be really intrigued to see what he does with Auburn. Excuse me while I get a sip of coffee because I've been talking for about a half hour. Need to wet the whistle. Already talked about Lenore Sellers. That's another guy that I got on there. Jeremiah Love really doesn't need an introduction, but I do think he's probably the one running back who has the potential to get taken in the first round of next year's NFL draft. So you look at this year's running back class, I don't think it's as deep next year. You do have the Penn State guys, Nick Singleton and Katron Allen. But outside of that, like I don't think you have the same level of juice at the running back position. That's why I think we saw so many runs on running backs in the 2025 draft. But I think Jeremiah Love's the outlier there. I probably would have had him in RB2 if I had to rank him in this year's class had he been eligible to enter the draft coming out of Notre Dame. But man, the ability to hit a home run, the ability to make guys miss in a phone booth, the ability to make guys miss in a variety of ways, whether that's through contact, whether that's a quick juke move, whether that's hurdling over a dude. Jeremiah Love's just a phenomenal runner with great vision and a great ability to use that vision to make guys miss. And I think that he's going to be a workhorse at the next level, and he's going to. I I would bet now that he is going to be a first round pick. The last guy I have on here that's kind of my guy, and to wrap up this segment, Danny Dennis Sutton, edge rusher out of Penn State. There's conflicting opinions about Dennis Sutton. He could have come out this year for the draft, decided to return to Penn State. Huge win for the Nittany Lions, no doubt about that. At the same time, when has banking on a Penn State edge rusher really been a bad idea in recent years? Chop Robinson was awesome last year. Abdul Carter was the number 3 pick in this year's draft. Micah Parsons is what Micah Parsons is. Like Penn State knows how to produce just dudes. And the thing with Dennis Sutton and why he's a bit polarizing is he doesn't look like the best athlete right now. He looks a little heavy-footed at times. Great bull rush, great power moves, great feel for the edge rusher position. But he is not the twitched up athlete like an Abdul Carter, like a Michael Parsons, like a Chop Robinson, even. However, Penn State has produced a hell of a lot of good athletes, and I wouldn't be the most shocked if we saw Dennis Sutton kind of like take a step forward, get in that strength and conditioning program, and really take a step forward and be someone who rises up draft boards pretty quickly. I'm not saying he's going to be a top five pick, but right now he's kind of looking like a fringe first rounder, maybe a second rounder. And I'd be willing to bet that he could climb his way into the top 20 before it's all said and done. We'll see if that happens. Again, I'm planting my flag early. We'll see what happens. But now we're going to move on. We're getting away from, draft analysis, but we are going to talk about one more draft thing with a new segment that I'm starting right now. Got to be better. And that's just to, frankly, Jax Ulbrich, who is the son of current Falcons defensive coordinator, former Jets staffer Jeff Ulbrich, who is the one who prank called Shedeur Sanders, made him think that he was getting drafted when he was not on day two, I believe. Also called Tyler Warren when the Jets were on the clock at the seventh pick. That may not have been Jax Ulbrich, but someone else did. This prank calling stuff is bogus, man. It's the dumbest thing I've ever seen in my life. What thrill do you get off of ruining a kid's dream in that moment? Like that's supposed to be one of the biggest days of his life. Shedeur Sanders is already going through it. Tyler Warren is ready to he's going to be a first round pick, and you're just putting a damper on this for what? To get a laugh with your buddies? Like I like having a laugh with my buddies. That's not how you do it, brother. Like it's just not. It's it's childish. And then we go coming to the fact that Jax Ulbrich released an apology, and he's a 21-year-old kid. We make dumb decisions when we're 21 years old. I don't want to crucify the kid. Was an awful decision, was incredibly stupid, and glad he issued an apology for it. But I think the real thing to talk about here is protection of information. Honestly, not something I'm terribly qualified to talk about. Let's be clear about that. But I do think that you got to ask yourself the question, how did Jax Ulbrich get this number? How did someone get Tyler Warren's number? Like the Shedeur Sanders number, only NFL teams had that. So we knew it was someone who was somehow connected to NFL teams. Turns out it was a defensive coordinator's son, which admittedly, I did get a chuckle to myself thinking about the Michael Penix Jr. pick last year and Shedeur wondering if the Falcons were going to do it again. Draft Shedeur Sanders after drafting Michael Penix after paying Kirk Cousins still on the roster, and you get a phone call from the son of Atlanta Falcons DC. You know, I got a little chuckle out of that. I will admit that. But on the whole, this can't happen. This just can't happen. Like you have to protect that information at all costs, man. Like these are you have to protect that information for your players just in general on a day-to-day basis with the 53 guys on your roster, not including the practice squad. But you also, these are kids we're talking about. We're talking about 22 to 20 to 18-year-old, or sorry, 21 to like 23, 24-year-old kids, or 26 if you're Tyler Shutt. These are kids we're talking about, and you're playing with their livelihood, you're playing with their future, you're making a joke out of their future. I can't get behind it. It's the dumbest thing I've ever seen. And that's why I'm calling this. We got to be better because we got to be better than this. Like if you're the Falcons, if you're Ulbrich, you got to be better than this. If you're someone who's thinking about who somehow were to get your hands on this number and you're thinking about, hey, wouldn't it be funny if I just called him up and made him think I don't know, I'm the Texans and we're going to draft him with the next pick. No, it's not funny. It's not funny at all. In fact, it's just plain wrong. It's stupid. It's wrong. It's dumb. I'm just it pissed me off a little bit, man. Like I don't think there's any other way to say it. Like imagine you're in a situation where you're in a highly competitive job market and you're applying for a job that you really want. You're applying for a job that you really, really want. And you've been talking to the hiring manager, you've been talking to someone who's probably going to be your manager or someone who's going to be your coworker. And they say, we'll call you in 2 days with an answer, whether or not you're getting the job or not. Someone within that company gets their hands on your contact information and thinks, wouldn't it be funny? Okay, this guy's not getting the job. Wouldn't it be funny though if I called him and made him think that he was getting the job? We'll make it clear after a minute and a half, couple minutes that he's not. But, wouldn't it be funny if I made him think he was getting the job? If you're in their shoes getting that call, no, it's not funny. And you're not a 21-year-old kid trying to figure out what the rest of your future is going to look like. Like, sometimes I think we forget because this is such a high profile market, whether it's the NFL, college football, whatever. These are human beings, bro. These are human beings and kids that just trying to figure out their lives, figure out what the next step is. And man, I was baffled that this happened, that there was such a lack of protection of the information to allow it to happen, but also that someone is just enough of an a-hole to be able to like look at this and be like, oh, this would be really funny. It's not. And the NFL is already investigating the Shedeur Sanders thing. Obviously, they know who the culprit is at this point. Will be interesting to see what kind of penalties come down and what kind of measures are taken going forward to make sure something like this doesn't happen. Because that needs to happen for sure. Moving on, though, we're going to get back to some college football here. We're going to talk portal to me. In the midst of the NFL draft, we did have some good portal stuff happen. My personal favorite was former Syracuse receiver Trevor Pena going to Penn State. But we also had former five-star Micah Hudson, who had transferred to Texas A&M previously, going back to Texas Tech. And then the other big one was North Carolina edge rusher Bo Atkinson transferring to Ohio State. It's gonna be a really positive talk portal to me segment because I love all of this. Like I think it's what all three of these programs really needed to do. We're gonna start with Pena in Penn State, which is going to be a tongue twister that I probably should rephrase that so I don't get twisted on my words because I'm pretty bad about that. But Penn State went into the spring portal, and I've said for months now. I'm going to be fascinated to see what they do at the wide receiver position because, as I mentioned with Drew Aller when talking about the 2026 draft, as I mentioned with Drew Aller in Penn State, this wide receiver core is inadequate. You have a good offensive line, you have a good defense, you have a good quarterback, you have great running backs, but damn, you need a wide receiver. And Pena was quite productive with Syracuse, quite productive as a downfield threat with Kyle McCord, and that's what Penn State needs. They need someone who can beat man coverage and open up the deeper parts of the field. Pena can do that. This is a huge addition to Penn State and only makes me feel higher about what the Nittany Lions are capable of. I still don't know who I'm going to pick as my 2025-2026 national champion, but Penn State is in consideration, and this makes me consider them even more because this feels like, I know it's one player, but it feels like a real missing piece type of situation. And the fact that Penn State was able to go into what seems like a pretty competitive market for Pena and pull him out tells me that James Franklin probably thinks so too. So really intrigued by that one. Really love the aggressiveness by Penn State to go out and get him in the portal. Then we go to Micah Hudson. Now, Texas Tech fans were pretty disappointed because he really didn't play an impact, like have an impact on the Red Raiders all that much in his freshman season. And one moment, please. He really didn't have an impact in the 2024 season. And it was like, well, we hyped up this five-star and he's not really going to contribute. What's this about? Now if you're looking at Texas Tech, they're kind of like the sleeper to win the Big 12 this year. And a damn good one too. Like I think there's a lot of reason to believe that. Shouts to Morton Salt at quarterback, but I think it's a good roster overall. The wide receiver talent is good, not great. If Micah Hudson hits, it's great. And so bringing him back in the fold, giving yourself another bite at that apple, that's what you needed to do. And so like I'm not sure what happened at Texas A&M, but for Texas Tech to be able to get him back, it's a big win. And the optics are going to look weird, but that's just kind of what the transfer portal is at this point. So I'm interested to see how that works out for the Red Raiders. Then we go to Ohio State. Ohio State is a factory when it comes to recruiting. Like, yes, they lost Jack Sawyer and yes, they lost JTT. I understand that. But they also have guys ready to replace them. Those guys are not proven. Bo Atkinson is proven. Bo Atkinson has been one of the bright spots of a pretty bad North Carolina defense over the past couple years. Kind of been a man on an island and needing to wreck games by himself if they're going to do anything on there. Now you're bringing in a guy with experience to kind of like bring these young guys along and also set the tones, be leaders, set the table. I think that Bo Atkinson to Ohio State is a move that makes a lot of sense for the mentality that Ryan Day is trying to preach. Like we talked about him not displaying national championship stuff, basically looking at this team and being like, y'all didn't earn S. Like y'all didn't earn a damn thing. Yes, there are players on that team who did win a national championship. I'm aware of that. But like the current team that's about to play as a team, as a collective whole, if you're trying to preach that culture, they haven't done squat. And so now you're bringing in a guy like Bo Atkinson and be like, yeah, y'all haven't earned squat. You haven't even earned the starting job. If you're an edge rusher replacing, thinking you're just going to step in behind Jack Sawyer and JTT. No, you got to beat out Bo Atkinson, a dude who's been highly productive in his career, and you're going to follow his lead as well. Like I think it speaks to the mentality that Ryan Day is trying to institute in Columbus, and I think it's all of that is coming up positive. I'm not like when we look at Ohio State, it's hard with what they've lost to consider them the national, like, with the number one with a bullet, the national championship favorite for next year. They're talented, but there's a lot of pieces that need to come together. However, I'm starting to become a believer in the Buckeyes just because of how Ryan Day is handling a post-championship world. I think he's doing a really damn good job of it right now. And we're going to finish off with Ohio State and some Big Ten energy. Just kind of want to take a shot at the Buckeyes, if I'm being honest. We're going to start with the compliments of the Buckeyes, though, which is that Ohio State led the 2025 NFL draft with the number of players selected. 14, I believe, is the number, barely edging out Georgia, who had 13. Ohio State has been just an NFL factory over the past few years. And one of the reasons why, until last year, everyone was very critical of Ryan Day, being like, hey, man, why can't you get this done with the talent that you have on this roster? Fair, completely fair. But now that now he's gotten that done, the next question is beating Michigan because you have all these players drafted in the 2025 NFL draft. But as Brett McMurphy of the Action Network pointed out, you still haven't beaten Michigan in nearly 2,000 days, brother. 1,975 as of this weekend. So 77 somewhere, 1,977, somewhere in that range. Almost 2,000 days since you beat Michigan. It's interesting. I I wish Bueller was here. Maybe we can talk about this on, another offseason program of what's the hang up here. And part of it to me has always been like 9 times out of 10, maybe 99 times out of 100, if you look at the rosters of Ohio State and Michigan over the past outside of 2023, uh, over a last long while, Ohio State should dog walk Michigan in terms of talent. Like they're just a better team. They just are. And yet they haven't been able to get it done. And when I look at it, it's the one bit of mentality that I think Ryan Day does need to shift. It's the one bit of mentality that I think Ryan Day needs to get out of his own way with. And I think we saw bits and pieces of it in the college football playoff, which actually, if I'm an Ohio State fan, would give me hope that this kind of lull or discrepancy with Michigan versus the rest of the body of work that can kind of level that out. And that is Ryan Day has a bad habit against Michigan of banging his head against the wall. He wants to beat Michigan at Michigan's game. Why? What kind of pride are we talking about here that you can't just beat them, you have to beat them at their own game? Brother, go out there and beat them by being the Ohio State Buckeyes. Go out there and beat them by being the more talented team. Go out there and beat them by being hanging 30 on them, which Michigan does not want to do. Like, if you want to play a 20, like race to 20 with them, you're going to keep Michigan in it every single time because that is the style of football, especially last year, but most years. They are a pro style team. They want to take the air out of the ball. They want to beat you with defense. They want to beat you into submission. And you're letting it happen. They did not have, Michigan last year did not have someone who could cover Jeremiah Smith. I mean, frankly, I don't think anyone in college football does. But they didn't have anyone that could cover Jeremiah Smith. They didn't get the ball to him nearly enough. It's just consistently been, but why I say the college football playoff would give me some hope is that Ohio State played their game to win a national championship. There was no time looking at whether it was Oregon, whether it was Tennessee. It didn't matter who it was. When Ohio State stepped on the field, they they looked like a team that wasn't like, hey, Oregon, we're going to beat you at your game. Hey, Josh Heupel, great offense. We're going to run it better. No, they went out there and they said, we're Ohio State. We're going to play Ohio State football and we're going to beat your ass at it. And they did, time and again. Now, to that point, there are like Michigan is going to have guys, particularly on the defensive side of the ball, they're going to make Ohio State football a little bit harder to come by. Granted, they probably still don't have anyone that can cover Jeremiah Smith, but Michigan is going to be able to muck things up. That's what they do well. And that's the beauty of football is, contrasting styles. But at a certain point, if a team's goal is to muck it up, your talent is still going to win out at the end of the day if you have guys who can emerge from the muck, for lack of a better term. You look at the national championship game. Notre Dame tried to muck that up. That was their only chance. Looked halfway decent for portions of that game. Push came to shove, though. Ohio State was the better team. Ohio State outclassed them. Ohio State out-talented them. And I think that's a lesson Ryan Day needs to take, and I think it's a lesson that the NFL draft is again indicative of. You're leading the NFL draft pretty consistently, if not at the lead near the top in draft picks every single year from your university, from your program. Why would you try to be anything else other than Ohio State? That's my question. And hopefully, I'm right if you're an Ohio State fan, because I do think Ryan Day may have learned that lesson. This was episode, I believe, 170. Not quite sure. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I'm sorry. This was episode 170 of False Start. You can follow me, Cody Williams, at the Sizzle20. You can follow Bueller, even though he's not here, at Bueller118 on the X, formerly known as Twitter. You can follow the show at CFB False Start. Would love it if you guys would like, rate, review, and most importantly, subscribe to False Start on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, follow us on Spotify, anywhere you can. Also, anywhere you can, give us that 5-star review. We need those 5 stars. Seen a lot of growth with the show. I appreciate everyone listening. The draft is fun. Now we're heading into the thralls of the college football off season. Let's get weird, boys. Let's get weird. And this is False Start.